Satnam, welcome everyone. This is the 2.46. That's the Sutra 2.46 up until the end of the chapter. We are approaching the end of the series as well. There is 4 chapters on the Yoga Sutras, but chapter 3 and 4, I haven't studied them that deeply, and also I don't find them so interesting, maybe because maybe there's something I'm missing, or because it's talking about things which are out of my experience and my reach. So it will be, I will just talk about it a little bit more in a future video. But today is one of the last videos of actual content, like a deeper content on these 8 steps, the 8 ranks of yoga, or the 8 limbs of yoga. We have been covering in the last few videos on yamas and niyamas, and now we come into the 6 main steps. And so we're going to cover that today, starting from 2.46. And let's see. There we go, 2.46. So let's start with this translation. Like that. The posture asana for yoga meditation should be steady, stable, and motionless, as well as comfortable. And this is the 3rd of the 8 ranks of yoga. Well, it doesn't say anywhere in the Sanskrit that this is the 3rd of the 8. Yeah, this is what Swami is telling us. The letters in Sanskrit say Sthira, Sukham, Asanam. Yeah, we can see also the. Let's check the big book of translations. Yeah, Sthira, Sukham, and Asanam. Now, there's something very funny here, which is that, let me focus this again. It's a little bit out of focus. Okay, hold on a second. See if I can get it to look a bit better. Yeah, it looked a little bit blue. I think this is a bit better. Still a bit blue, but that's the best I can do today. Now, it's very funny because sthira, the root of sthira is sta, which means to stand. And asanam comes from as, that means to sit. So how funny that it is to stand and to sit. I find it interesting. But sthira itself actually means steady or stable. And I find it remarkable how different languages utilize the same sounds to mean something. And I have a whole course on the meaning of sounds, which is the mantra course. If you want to watch it, that was a course when I went really into a lot of depth and detail on every sound and how they affect us, how they touch our body, and how they affect our consciousness. And within this course, when we did the special on samadhi, we talked about the sound of the S as at the beginning of samadhi. Yeah. And the S is a sound that primarily connects to the energy of the snake, the serpent, this kundalini sound that slithers up the spine. So it's very interesting that this very first word, sthira, you can see the connection in Sanskrit with S and T. And you can find words which contain this S and T, like stand. You can see it in steady, stable. Another one that is important is static, because we want this posture to be steady and static, not to move around. And it just reflects some of the qualities that are associated with this, the strength of the first chakra, and the, groundness, being in the ground, and that's a steady, it's a stable, it's a strong, it's a static, it's all these ST things. And this is what it's telling us. Look, you want to do the meditation bit? Great. First, you have to get stable and steady and strong and static and all that. So be able to stay steady for some time without moving and feeling strong in your posture, but not just strong, but also sukham, comfortable. Yeah, it comes also from sukh, which is good, but this being comfortable, easy. So what this is telling us is asana is about the posture that we should hold is a posture that is comfortable and stable, comfortable and static, that we don't move, and it requires no effort. So it's like comfortable. Yeah. So that's an interesting thing, because when we talk about asanas, we often think about these weird postures that we put the physical body into, and they are generally not very comfortable, aren't they? But what these asanas are done, what they are doing is they are making the body more supple, more flexible, more healthy, so that the energy can flow, and we can be, when we finish all our different practices, we can sit, and with no effort, yeah, we can feel comfortable and steady, and we don't move around. Because if we don't do anything on the physical body and then we just sit, very, very quickly we start feeling discomforts. Maybe one leg feels a cramp, another one is falling asleep, have back pain, and I have some things are arising from the body, and they are making the process of concentrating the mind more difficult. So in order to get to that stability of the body and that comfort of the body, that's why we do all these postures that we think, oh, well, there's some problem with the flexibility. Well, let's do these asanas, which are going to be enhancing the flexibility of the spine. You feel some pain in one side of the body. Have you balanced it with the other side? So let's do these other asanas, which are balancing left and right. You have some issue with the kidneys, or maybe some issue with the liver. Okay, let's do this asana, which is going to help the liver be healthy, so that you can sit quietly for a long period of time and not be worried about the organ. So this is the purpose of asanas. And my mantra teacher used to say, Masmare, he said that some people go into yoga, and when they think about yoga, they think about just the asanas. And I will not even say just hatha yoga, because hatha is even wider than just the asanas. If you check the book Hatha Yoga Pradipika, which I covered in another video in the channel, it's about the awakening of the Kundalini, and it's a whole process. But sometimes we associate hatha yoga, particularly in the West, with the physical work. And when we think about asanas, we think about that, the physical work, kind of like a sport. And it's fine, it's good, it's no problem with that. You concentrate on the body and you make sure you have a healthy body, that's great. But if you spend your whole life doing your asanas every morning, and you don't meditate, and then you don't sit still to meditate, Masmare used to make this metaphor. It's like learning all your life to jump on a trampoline, right? To train yourself how to jump on a trampoline, and never actually go into the water, never actually dive into the pool. So you are like there jumping on the trampoline years and years and years, training yourself how to do the most beautiful jump, and never actually over from the trampoline into the water. So the asanas, the purpose of the asanas is that then you can be comfortable, that you can be relaxed, effortless, and hold it for a long period of time, so that the practice of dharana, dhyana, samadhi can come. Yeah, the other parts, the more advanced practice of meditation has to be built on a foundation of health and comfort in the physical body. So that's one of the aspects. Now, there is another way to look at this steady, comfortable posture, this Sthira Sukhamasana. There's another way to do this. Well, posture is like, it's translated as posture, it means to sit and to be present. I don't know, sorry, I switched very, very quickly. To sit and to be present. Now, how about if we understand these three words, like being present in here, comfortable, yeah, and sit within and stay steady in that place. So what I mean now is that you can be walking down the street. You don't have to be sitting and laying motionless, which is recommended for meditation, but we're not going to be motionless all day, because this is the householder yoga, right? We are the yoga that we talk about in this channel is mainly the householder one, it's not the ascetic path. So if you're going to be working and moving around, traveling, whatever, while you are walking down the street, can you sit in your heart? Can you sit in yourself? Can you sit in the center of your being and stay comfortably placed there, unmovable in that place? That's like sitting within, right? Sitting in your heart, sitting inside, not actually going around, but actually sitting in. So that's the proposition as well. Not just to be comfortable when you sit, but actually sitting in your heart and being comfortable there. And this is particularly important for anybody who has trouble sitting. And, yoga is very flexible. Yeah, we do yoga to be flexible, but yoga itself, the practice, is also very flexible. So if I'm thinking of an older gentleman who will be hard for him to sit on the ground, there's no problem to sitting on a chair. You can sit on a chair, that's okay. As long as you don't fall asleep and then fall off the chair and harm yourself, right? So you should be aware of that, be mindful of that. But doing yoga on a chair is perfectly fine. The main problem with being on a chair is that we tend to lean back. And if we lean back in the chair, as soon as we lose the verticality with the spine and then we lean, the leaning back is like a switch that is going to disconnect the consciousness, and it's easy to fall asleep or go into the mind and the whatever fantasy the mind is playing. But if you can hold your awareness, you can be laying in bed and doing that. Some people are bedridden. They cannot leave the bed. So what do? They cannot do yoga. They cannot do dharana, dhyana, samadhi. Of course they can, right? But can they sit within and comfortable and stay steady and present, not to lose consciousness? So look at how much is within those three words. Yeah, how much is contained with these three simple words. How much is suggested, how much is it implied and invited also. So the invitation is to hold steady, hold steady and strong and stable in the present, and to sit within in the place where we feel more comfortable, more easy within our heart, and stay there. And then with that staying, look at how much S, sthira, sukham, asanam, there's the S resonating within the three words, the very same S sound that is the awakening of this energy, this kundalini. So just by staying stable and steady in that place, that's already having an impact on the energy of the kundalini. That's quite powerful. We talked about the S in that video on samadhi. All right. Well, that's 2.46. Let's read the next. Let's read a few translations. The means of perfecting the posture is that of relaxing or loosening of effort and allowing attention to merge with endlessness or the infinite. Okay. Let's read another one. By lessening the natural tendency for restlessness and by meditating on the infinite, posture is mastered. Through the lessening of the natural tendency for activity caused by identification with the body, and through meditation on the infinite, the posture becomes firm and pleasant. So we were just coming from talking about this steady, comfortable posture. Steady, comfortable posture. Well, how do you get there? Well, through lessening the tendency for restlessness. So now let's check that book. Let's check this translation from the book. Let's see. This is the book by Satchidananda, and he's talking about this tendency for restlessness. That's the prayadna. What is the prayadna? Well, let's see what the book says about the prayadna. Prayadna is about effort. Through effort. So this is, when I was preparing this video today, in the morning, I was reading of different translations, and I haven't seen anywhere where it relates this prayadna to the tendency for restlessness, but we can find it both in the translation from Satchidananda and Vivekananda. So that's different from others, yeah? They are mastered when all effort is relaxed and the mind is absorbed in the infinite. I like this. Scherer is quite good in it, and translations very succinct, much simpler, yeah? But here is also relaxing or loosening the effort. So it's about the effortless that I was mentioning before. Here is not so much about the effortless, it's about lessening the tendency to activity. You may see activity like a sort of tension, but it's like stop that activity, stop the tension, stop the restless nature, and then be calm and effortless. You can see it like that. But this tendency for activity, I don't see it in the translation or in the roots of the words. I don't find it. In any case, it would make sense anyway. Yeah, that this is, we're talking about sitting stable and still. Still is another good word, yeah, static and still. So this natural restlessness of the mind, which is influencing the body, and restlessness of the body, then it's about, okay, you're holding still with an effort. Well, can you hold it without effort? So it's about reaching that state of letting go of the tension to hold that position, and then bring the mind to, samapati, to ananta. Samapati biham ananta. So samapati, you may remember that this is a word that we came up when we were reading the sutras 1.42, something like that. I think it was 42 to 45. And we were talking about the different levels of samapati. And there was the savitarka samapati, nirvitarka, sarvichara, and nirvichara samapati. This is chapter 1. Maybe it's been a long time and maybe you forgot about that. But there was this savitarka, savichara, nirvitarka, nirvichara. And there's the 4 different aspects of concentration of the mind. And there was, maybe you remember the metaphor easily, that when we are concentrating on the flower, and then we're looking at the flower, that was the savitarka, and then the subtle essence of the flower without thought, that would be nirvitarka, and then savichara would be more subtle, not the flower itself, but the beauty of the flower, then that would be the savichara, and then nirvichara would be when there is no thought and you're just in the presence of that beauty of the flower. You don't see the flower anymore, you just perceive the beauty of the flower. Well, those were the 4 different aspects of samapati that Patanjali was referring to. And now he brings back this concept of samapati in terms of ananta. So bringing the mind, attaining the, how does he say, attaining a state of consciousness by meditation, the focus, focusing the consciousness on ananta, the boundless, the eternal, the infinite, the unending. And you can see this as the infinite, but sometimes when we think about the infinite, we look up and out into the universe. And the suggestion I was giving before is about sitting comfortable within your heart, within yourself. And if you go within and you release the tension and you hold yourself present in the state, you can access Purusha. And Purusha, this spirit, this consciousness, this is eternal. Yeah, it has been here before we were born. It will continue after this body is dead. So that's an eternal and endless thing that continues. So when we have to do this samapati on something boundless, something endless, can you do that on that eternal aspect of the soul? Can we bring the focus to that eternal aspect? So if we sit in that comfortable posture and then we let go of every effort, but we hold the attention into this part of us which doesn't die. I find that very revealing, and I find much clearer for me than just concentrating on the infinite, because concentrating on the infinite can be very dispersing and like the opposite of focusing, because you want to focus, but then the infinite is infinite. So how do you focus on the infinite? Maybe that's the paradox. That's kind of like this Zen phrases, what sound does one hand do clapping? How do you clap with one hand? Maybe this is one of those paradoxes, Concentrate on the infinite. The infinite is infinite. The concentration is one point. So how do you do that? Maybe that's it. But the way I find it more clear, more than this, confusing me, more clear to me is to go to this one place within where I can contact the infinite, that the infinite self within. And when you go into that place, every tension can relax and you can sit there stable and still and steady and strong and all those ST beautiful words. So sitting within. You could say, in a way, There is a phrase that sometimes we mention when we are holding the practice. You can say it when you are in a posture, but you can also say when your meditation is holding the attention without tension. Right? Attention is linked to awareness, but then can you do it without any tension, without tense about it, but just relax. But if you relax, we tend to go to sleep. So relax in a way that we can hold the attention. It's another paradox, but it's kind of like this, what Patanjali is telling us. No? Hold the attention without any tension. Focus one point into the infinite, all the points. So it's like double paradox, and then you are there in the middle of this double bridge. It's like, like a string, and then there's the middle point, and then can you find that middle point, and then there's the horizontal line and all the side to side and forward and backward lines, and you are right in the middle of both, no? So focused in the infinite, attention with no tension, and you are there, right there. And if you manage, and this is effortless, that's asana. That's the asana step. Imagine, Patanjali is not telling us, when you manage to sit in lotus pose, then you will be able to meditate. No, it's not telling us this. It's telling us, hold that position, aware, attentive, and steady. All right. So that's 2.47. Let's go into 2.48. Then, let's read some translations. Thereafter, one is not disturbed by the dualities. Yeah? Then we are no longer upset by the play of opposites. That's good. I like this. Yeah? We are no longer upset by the play of opposites. Posture being conquered, the dualities do not obstruct. Ganeshwara tends to be the longest translation. From the attainment of the perfected posture, there arises an unassailable, unimpeded freedom from suffering. I think it's referring to the sukha dukkha. You remember sukh and dukh? And because here is doing, in the 2.46 we were talking about sukham, comfortable and easy. The opposite was dukkham, which was the suffering. So he is referring to that. Unimpeded freedom from suffering due to the pairs of opposites, such as heat and cold, good and bad, or pain and pleasure. Well, this being, how does Scherer say it? No longer upset by the play of opposites. This, or not disturbed by the dualities, this is the way we describe a yogi. One of the definitions of a yogi is the one who is not affected by polarities. So whether somebody praises you, Wahuru, somebody slanders you, Wahuru, somebody is gonna give you a hand and they help you, Wahuru, they turn their back on you or they betray you, Wahuru. Whatever play of opposites happens is just unaffected. Because every yin comes with every yang comes with a yin. They are both playing at the same time, and the yogi is the one who stays in the middle, finds that middle path. All right, let's see 2.49. Excuse me. We are using the big book today, much more. Hold on. That firm posture being acquired, the movements of inhalation and exhalation should be controlled, and this is pranayama. Control of the motion of the exhalation and inhalation follows after this. Next come the breathing exercises which suspend the flow of breath and increase life energy. Well, I think that's a much more freer translation in this case. Okay. This book is so big, it's hard to get the camera to focus all of it. So upon this having been accomplished, swasa, inhalation, and praswasayo, exhalation, the flow of them is regulated. So by regulating, it's often said as controlling, but I like more regulating because But anyway, it's basically the same. Controlling or regulating the flow of the inhalation and the exhalation, that's where we come into pranayama. So it's interesting because when you look at the word pranayama, let's read the pranayama. Prana, ayamaha, that's command or expansion. Okay? Command or expansion. Expansion of prana through breath control. I find these two translations very interesting because the translations are generally focused on the command aspect, controlling your breath, control the inhale and the exhale. And it's a little bit forgotten the other aspect, the expansion one. And what this is implying is that through the breathing exercises, we're going to expand our capacity to channel our prana and utilize it for the things that you need to do. And I mean, here we could go so much deeper into pranayama, but we could do a whole course on pranayama. There is different kinds of prana in the body, and there is a prana that is given to us before we are born, what we call the prenatal prana. And there is another prana that recharges throughout the day, and every day and every night. This is recharging like little batteries. And it's talking about pranayama, extending the prana. So if we are giving a certain quantity of prenatal prana, prenatal battery charge, one thing we would like to do is to extend the charge as much as possible, right? When you charge your mobile phone, you don't want it to run out by 11 in the morning. You want it to extend its life throughout the whole day so that you can put it to charge at night. And in the same way, the prana that we are given for this life, we want to extend its use as much as possible. And also, that would mean a number of things. That would mean how we receive prana during the day. That will mean how we manage prana, how we don't lose it in a way that is not convenient. Yeah, because that's one of the problems with prana. It's not about not gathering it. It's often about how we waste it. And that's linked to the 5 thieves, the 5 evils. And that was kind of mentioned in the first chapter when we were talking about different emotions, how they trigger our vrittis. And that's the way we lose a lot of prana, not just in the mind, but also prana through the physical body. We lose a lot of energy. And you can imagine that if we are staying steady and stable, that stillness, it's going to conserve energy. And that's great that we want to extend that, but it's not just about extending many years of our life. There is a phrase, I don't remember how it was, like, it's not about how many years has your life, but how much life has your years, or something like that. How many days? Oh yeah, how is that? How many days has your life, but how much life has your days? Something like that. So it's not about living for 100 years or 150 if you wish, but it's about the how much you utilize that prana during the day and how much life do you have. And that's going to be connected to the vitality. Life is vitality. And we have another video on that. Today I'm connecting to a lot of videos, but we talked about this in a video when we talked about relaxation, stress, and vitality, and how the 3 of them are connected. And it's not about being relaxed. It's not just about being like very relaxed. It can be going to tamasic. And we've learned that this is about becoming sattvic. And there is a sattvic way of utilizing prana, which is the result is that you have vitality. And that's what you want, not just to sit still, but have the vitality. So meditation in a way is sitting still, but then can you also sit within your heart while you are doing things, utilizing your vitality to do things in life. So we should put it into perspective with both things at the same time. In any case, through the regulation of the inhale and the exhale, regulating this is what we will call pranayama, and this is going to help us extend the life of that prana, because the prana, we mostly absorb it through the breath. When we are breathing is how we are learning to gather the prana, like the oxygen that we get into the body. All right. So 2.49, 2.50. The modifications of the life breath are either external, internal, or stationary. They are to be regulated by space, time, and number, and are either long or short. Okay, we will have to see what all this means. Because are threefold, namely external, internal, and motionless. This is like external, internal, and motionless. This is the exhale, the inhale, and the holding of the breath. And they are regulated by place, time, and number. I will go into this in a moment. And they are either long or short. So it's a pretty direct translation. Let's read Ganeshvara. The pranayama has three aspects: external or outward flow, the exhalation. Here it is: internal or inward flow, inhalation. And the third, which is the absence of both during the transition between them, and is known as fixedness, retention, or suspension of the breath. These are regulated by place, time, and number, with breath becoming slow and subtle. So what this is telling us, well, we're going to regulate the breath to extend the prana, and there is three kinds of breaths. Let's say there's when we are inhaling, there's when we are exhaling, we are also holding the breath. Well, these are the three: Puraka, Rechaka, Kumbhaka. Yeah, and then you can regulate this flow of the breath in three ways. There's the place, the time, and the number. The place, when we are doing pranayama, is where do you focus the awareness on. This is how I understand it, okay? There may be other ways to understand this. But the place, I understand that this is whether you are focusing on the air passing through the nostrils, for example, or when you are breathing in and then you bring the energy of the breath, you're bringing into the third eye. So that's a different place. Or when you are focusing on the passage through the throat and the emptiness in the pit of the throat, that's a different kind of breath. Or like, for example, Ujjayi, when you're doing Ujjayi pranayama. Or is the awareness in the diaphragm? Or is it on the navel? Or is it in the spine? The spine is breathing. So there's many, many ways to focus on the breath in different places, and they will have different effects. So that's the places. That's the one. Two is time. So you can be inhaling for 10 seconds and exhaling for 10 seconds, for example, or you can inhale 10 and exhale 20, and that will be how much time you are inhaling, how much you are holding, how much you are exhaling, how much you are holding. And this is typically written as a number with two dots and another number. Is it called a colon? It's like 1, colon, 2. That would be 1 inhale and 2 exhale, meaning that the ratio is 1 to 2. So if you are inhaling in 5 seconds, you are exhaling in 10. If you are inhaling in 10, you are exhaling in 20, something like that. So that's how much time you dedicate for the inhale, for the holding, and for the exhale. And the number, that's when you are counting. You can be counting 1, 2, 3, 4, and you can even do the segmented breathing. So it's like 10 different inhales. You do 10 inhales and then 10 exhales. So that would be segmented breathing. And you can do 10 inhales in 10 seconds. You can do in less time, or you can do 8 inhales in 10 seconds. So the counting is going to have also a different effect. So if you are counting up to 4 to get full, it's not the same as if you are counting 8 to be full. And it may seem weird if you haven't explored this, if you haven't tried it, but you can experiment with this. Just to do a few minutes, 3 minutes of counting 4 to inhale, 4 to exhale, and then do 3 more minutes counting 8 to inhale, 8 to exhale. And you can try counting 8. So 1, 2, 3 while you inhale. So 1 inhale, 8 seconds, and then also try segmented. So 8 breaths to inhale. And make sure that after each inhale, you don't lose any air. Right? You inhale, 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 inhale. So it's like a staircase. If you look at the diagram of your breath, we were looking at the breath signatures the other day and linked to emotions. So this would be like a staircase going up. And the drawing over here somewhere. I don't have it here right now. Well, anyway, so it's like a segmented breath is like a staircase going up to full and then a staircase coming down to empty. And so these are the three ways that you can regulate your breath. So that's the place, the time, and the number. Yeah, the place, the time, and the number for the regulation of the breath. And then you can make it long or short. This is at the end of the book. It doesn't fit. Long or subtle. Oops, sorry. And if it says subtle, I would also say that that has to do also with how strong it is or how soft it is, that regulation of the breath. So these are the three, the inhale, the holding, and the exhale. But then there is a fourth one as well. And let's read about this. There is a fourth kind of pranayama that occurs during concentration on an internal or external object. The fourth is the restraining of the prana by directing it either to external or internal objects. The fourth kind takes us beyond the domain of inner and outer. Very different translations, eh? The fourth pranayama is that continuous prana which surpasses beyond or behind those others that operate in the exterior and interior realms. Let's go to the Sanskrit. Outward, external, or inward, internal, as in the movement. Vishaya, objects of experience, areas, fields, spheres, subjects, objects of sensory experience, realms. Transcending, going beyond. That's the fourth. So the fourth kind, let's read another translation again, which goes beyond the sphere of internal and externals is the fourth. The fourth is the restraining of the prana by directing it either to external or internal objects. So here Vivekananda is saying directing it to the external or the internal, but the translation seems to say transcending it and going beyond, but gradually moving in. So you can see it in both ways. The fourth pranayama is the continuous prana which surpasses, is beyond or behind the others. Well, in Satchidananda's book, I'm not going to read it right now, but he mentions how on top of the three basic ones of inhaling and holding and exhaling, there is a fourth different kind of pranayama which occurs when the breath stops. And somehow, and it happens naturally. So you're not regulating it in a way that I'm going to stop my breath. That would be holding. But it's about how in a state of very deep concentration and attention to objects, being it internal or external, when you go into a certain state of samadhi, the breath naturally stops. And it's not that the prana disappears, you are there with the prana, but you are not controlling it. You are not regulating the inhale or the exhale. And it can stop for a number of minutes. And the prana is in your cells, in your membranes, in your tissues, in your whole body is filled with prana, but you're also not wasting prana because the body is steady, still, is not restless, and the mind has reached a certain point of focus, is concentrated, one-pointedness, and therefore the mind is not using prana, and the body is barely using any prana, but it's also saturated with prana from the pranayama, so from the pranayamas that you were doing. So the breath stops, and the body continues to exist, right? And the mind continues to exist, but you're not inhaling or holding the breath. You're not doing anything with the breath. The breath is just stopping, right? And this is some of the states of samadhi that we hear about, like in the stories from Yogananda, when it will look like the person has died, but they are not dead. It's just that they are not breathing. So this would be kind of the fourth state of pranayama. And it's not that the person is holding the breath. They are just in a different state of consciousness. So one should not even try to attempt to reach that fourth state by doing anything with the breath. One should not try to reach that. That happens naturally if you get to that state of one-pointedness. And if you read Ganeshvara, I mean, here I'm just reading the translations, but then in the books there is a longer explanation, right? So if you look at Ganeshvara's explanation, if you look in the wider description, it gives an example of how, let's say you are floating on the sea, on the surface of the sea, and then as you are floating, you can feel the waves coming in and out. Yeah, the wave comes and then it goes, and then the body rises and lowers, and you are at the mercy of the waves, feeling all the waves, how they are moving, and you identify with that movement of the waves. And he says, well, there is the inhaling and the rising and exhaling and the descent and the holding in between. But there is another one, he says, when you are going deep into meditation, you go deep under the water, you are still in the middle of the ocean, you're still in the water. So prana is around, abounds everywhere, but you are not feeling the flow of it anymore. So I understand that even though Patanjali is telling us, look, you want to extend your prana, then practice regulating the inhale and the exhale and the holding. But there is a fourth way to extend your prana, and there is a fourth way that you can feel the prana, and it is just by feeling the prana, just by being in the prana, just by diving into the ocean of prana. And then you can receive prana through your tissues, through your cells, through your chakras directly. You don't have to inhale or exhale to receive it. But that somehow happens naturally. You don't force it, you don't control that. That happens naturally. This is the way I understand this fourth aspect of the pranayama. That's 2.41. Yeah, going beyond the objects. So when you are going beyond the objects of experience, yeah, internal or external, then that is the fourth one. Okay. And then when you reach that, what happens then? As a result, the veil over the inner light is destroyed. By that, the covering of the light of the chitta is attenuated. The light of the intellect is unveiled. I mean, intellect, chitta, there's many ways to say it. The pranayama, the veil of karma shaya that covers the inner illumination of light is thinned, diminishes and vanishes. Well, the description here is this prakasha, this is the light, and this light has been covered with the veil, and this is going to be dissolved or disappears or vanishes. So through the breath, through doing the regulation of the breath of the three breaths, and by coming into contact naturally into this fourth stage of pranayama, what happens is that the veil that separates us, he talks about the veil on the light, but I see this very much, this prakasha, right? Kind of like the light of consciousness, like the light of Purusha that is shining within. And this veil that separates us from that light, it dissolves. It's kind of a veil, if you think of a veil, is something that is very thin, something like this, that's very thin. And this is covering the real self. And you can imagine that as you are breathing, you can breathe through the veil and contacting that aspect of us that, if you remember a few sutras back, is infinite. It's infinite, yeah? It's endless, it's boundless. Well, that infinite light, that infinite essence is just covered with this thin veil, and when you breathe through, that veil vanishes, disappears, and then you are breathing your spirit. Yeah, that's inspire, to inhale, inspired, bringing the spirit in. So you are crossing through the veil and feeling the spirit within. That's the objective of pranayama. That's the result of pranayama. And then the mind becomes fit for concentration. Yeah, the mind becomes fit for dharana, fit for being steady. Well, and it's here we go. Yeah, dharana. So for dharana, you remember that we are doing pranayama now. So asana pranayama. We will come into pratyahara in a moment, and we are getting ready for dharana, dhyana, samadhi. The last three steps, what we call the samyama. So by doing this kind of breath and by dissolving this veil that is covering the inner light, we are getting ready for dharana. This is what we are doing. And the mind is getting ready for that. Is fit, is ready, is capable. 2.54. When the senses withdraw themselves from the objects and imitate, as it were, the nature of the mind stuff, this is Pratyahara, withdrawing themselves from the objects. When the mental organs or senses, the indriyas and actions, cease to be engaged with the corresponding objects in their mental realm, so that means when you are not like looking out into the world and getting focused on that, and they assimilate or turn back into the mind field from which they arose, this is called Pratyahara. This is the 5th step. Pratyahara is the drawing in of the organs, referring to the indriyas, is affected by their giving up their own objects and taking, as it were, the form of the mind stuff. Which mind stuff is this? Chittasya. And remember, Chittasya, it can be translated in a number of ways. It generally talked about the mind's field, but Chitta comes from Chit. Chit is consciousness. So this is the field of consciousness that is focused on the mind, that is paying attention to what the mind is saying and perceiving possible disturbances of the mind in the mind. Remember the second line of the Yoga Sutras, Yogas Chitta Vritti Nirodha. Chitta Vritti, so the movement, the waves on the Chitta. So this is what is saying, is coming back to the Chitta. The senses withdraw themselves from the objects and come back to that Chitta, come back to the origin of this mind field. So we were with the objects outside, and now we are bringing them back in. You will remember, in a way, when we started talking about the 8 steps, a few videos back, before the yamas and niyamas, we talked a lot about this in one video, about the whole process, going from asana to samadhi. We've been through asana and pranayama today. We are now doing pratyahara, this sense withdrawal. So coming out of the indriyas and going within, going inside. And this is the field of chittam, the field of consciousness, which is generally attached to what is happening in the mind. But this is like saying, no, just go beyond and then go into the consciousness of the self, like what is beyond the veil. The veil was put there by Maya, by the way. Maya puts the veil and tells you, look out. So you are having less of an effect of Maya, and by regulating the prana, the veil is dissolving. You are not so focused outside, and now you can go within into the infinite part of us, the unending, the boundless part of us. That would be the samadhi and getting realized. So that's the process. And 2.45. Then follows supreme mastery over the senses. So through that turning inwards of the organs of senses and actions also comes a supreme ability, controllability or mastery over those senses inclined to go outwards towards their objects. So by withdrawing from the objects in the outside and turning back into this chittaya was it? Chittasya? What was it called? Chittasya? This field of consciousness. Then we reach the final supreme mastery over the indriyas, over the senses. These are the senses of action and the senses of perception. So these ones, the indriyas. So you reach mastery over the indriyas. So by the way you get to here, by the time you get to Pratyahara, you are reaching mastery over your senses. And now that you are master of your senses, then remains only the last 3 steps of the meditation. Concentration, meditation, and samadhi. These 3 steps are covered in the next chapter, in chapter 3. And so we will talk about this in the following video. The following video will be about what happens with these 3 aspects and also in relationship to the rest of the chapter 3 and what comes through later in the chapter 4. But we will not do like 10 videos on chapter 3 and chapter 4. That would be too long for this course as well. And I've also noticed that the this course is becoming quite long, and I know some people lose the attention, when the courses become too long. I already do quite long courses, like the one on the Mul Mantra was quite long as well. But I noticed that people don't hold their attention for that much, and I'm not sure how much interest is for these videos. So I have the feeling that before the ending of the year, we have to end this course, and we will start the new year with a new course. So that's where we are right now. I did some tests to do live streaming outside in nature, and they worked fine, but I need something to hold the camera, like a selfie stick. I'm gonna get that for Christmas probably. And then, so my plan for new year is to be able to do some of these videos, not all, but some of these videos in nature. And I think that will be more enjoyable for me, definitely, and maybe even for yourselves. And maybe we can stay longer, not a longer period. Maybe we can do meditations together in the outside in nature, and you can join me as well. You can connect online and then meditate together. That's my idea. But I'll talk a little bit more about this as the year ends. But for now, for today, I think it's enough for a video. Thank you very much for being here with me. Thank you for all the subscribes and the likes and the sharings, and especially for the members. Thank you for all the support. And until next time, Sadhana, thank you.